Yeah, Dricum Seattle.
Are
they already here? Welcome everyone. This afternoon, Abao Lama is giving a teaching. So we're very thankful Abao Lama spend time give the teaching. So right now we do opening prayer.
Tarba dan damje zimba barda jubar seba damje jazo sebe manangka dan yambe zamje damje dewa dan de donga dan chai nyurde lana meba yang dog bara zobe zanje rambo je dobar ja.
All mothers, sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mothers, sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings.
Deva dan deva jo dan den bara jo ja donga dan donga ra ja jo dan jo Chöje dongar bebe dewa da mundrawa chöje nyereng chada nyeda da nyola ne bar chöje.
May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Lingyan jenden ramjan junzan jo ramjan jamso xing jorbe zo malu loya landa berla na tenyen rogo doje zongde zo dalu lomjo doba jenje da bongkan jinji Darayon Dhamma Dada Zonga Ngobo Jerze Go Braja Danze Yawara Zenja Lo Ngadan Ngumen Tale Yongdorge Jinga Nezon Dowan Dajeje Mengse Lenda Nelo Mendojo Pere Zanje Dobar Zenja Lo.
An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms. If I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body, enjoyments, and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine, by offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping. Completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial. The supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood.
Namo Nase Namdaka Lama La Nase Yegen Sancho Bamba Kamsa Yanda Da Zowanda Korwa Tondo Zasenjalo Ye Yibye Norwa Zogaja Nazan Jeme Jarvado Chimbe Yege Nadande Zava Danye Gardenji Drowa Jumne Rumboje Dasemye Jangana Zowanda Chenye Janganda Zenjalo Samdune Jime Namdage Londe Juga Doba Zenjalo.
Namo. To the Guru, the utter purity of all appearance and existence, I offer all appearance and existence arisen as the primordial ground. I supplicate you, may the 3 realms be completely liberated. Please grant blessings to empty samsara from its depths. Lord, with 5 omniscient wisdoms, crown ornament, kind one, with loving nature, precious protector of beings, heart of all Buddhas, inexpressible by words or thought, I supplicate you from the core of my mind. Bless me from within the state of Dharmata. Bless me to realize this mind primordially pure and unborn as the unfathomable Dharmakaya. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles and the teachings common to both, according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
So Tenzin dan Jejo Lo Chuson Do Wara Senja Labdo So Chulam Don Do Wara Senja Lam Chupa Se Wara Senja Labdo So Chuna Yike Senja Wara Senja Labdo So Sisum Dunga Jenda Chi Jenji Nya Some Bon Xie Wara Jila So Senjin Dan Dan Yer Da Da Tamba Nam Jen Nam Ta Tsar Da So Tene Ta Taja Nanda Yupa Samala Tene Tomar Tahi Dele Yes.
First, I would like to say Dashitele to everyone who has joined us on the live stream.
Tene Tambo Tomar Ta Chukiaka Yudu Tene Gunlong de Yabojo Go Yudi Tene Tambo Ten Sentient Tam Sanje Konkonto Pichi de Tentere Chukichi de Tubata, Samba, Gomba, that is in time, Nyamselin, Tenicaseke Inns and Golong, Tin Sanjo, the Sanji Bashkas.
And so first, when we listen to Dharma teachings, we receive Dharma teachings, a good motivation is very important. And so that it means to think that I am engaging in this practice, I'm listening to or reflecting and meditating on the Dharma today for the sake of the enlightenment of all sentient beings, to bring all sentient beings to the state of enlightenment. So I have a motivation that is directed toward enlightenment.
Tene Patron Bojaka Sumba Nanji, Tene Marna Luna Sem Lu, Zelen Ruina, Takata Jan, Zuboka Chunin Steel Day, then Kapjaka, then Yin the Yunayang, Tene Mason, Jazoko, Namshita Sarala, Yang Masonga, Tene Lunga Yen Son Zeta, Tene Nintomna, Pinto Jungaris.
And Pato Rinpoche had said, when you listen to the Dharma, practice the Dharma, then first the mind has to be inside the body, and then the body and the mind need to be in a relaxed state. And that is important because otherwise your body might be at the setting of the Dharma, like sitting on the chairs and so on. But if the consciousness is distracted outward, then it is also of no benefit. So we should try to bring it all together, body, speech, and mind, and listen really single-pointedly, and then it will really be beneficial.
Tene Sama Kisari, Rinpoche Gona Chimbori, Ten Yankana, Takajin Nangona, Ten Namshi Savori, Nina Gona Chimbori, Tente and Tene Tangati Chala, Gachin Nangris, Tene Sedota, Naketa, the Sujitan Yuris, the Tenisian Solar Pin Toka Yudami, Hako Masong Tetani, Chicken Tangaka Kanshin was Lagarua.
So all of you know that Rinpoche is already older now, and so it's for this reason it's hard for him to teach the whole day. It's also the weather. The weather is very hot, and so Rinpoche is older, so he can't teach the whole day. So that is why we've made some time for myself to give some teachings now today in the afternoon. I'm not sure if it's going to be of any benefit to you, but I will try my best.
Tene Rinpoche ke Kableja da Wang Chi da Tajaton Mangona Yuris. The Rinpoche Reva the Kare Yuris in the Loma Tamjike Nyamin Si Loma Tamjik Nyamin Jelpin Tona San Tendachin Sin the Kangar Ja the Sutang the Yuris. The Loma Chans Hako Goris. Then the Rinpoche Reva Nagi Chang Sokiatani, Tenagi, J. Chutu de la Hutsun Sika Yomishi, Sika Yuna, Tenagi, Simina, then Siroji Zogins. Beton Sika Yomishi, Sika Yabura, Sika Mina, Rinpoche Kangajan to Tunde Chigora, 대인들이 longa 탐지 나서 사막게 되니 제 주때는 좀더 세컨도스 롬보체 레바테 되니 도미 취지도 땅마 샤바 되는 저 상동건도스.
As you know, Garchen Rinpoche is really making a great effort to always teach us, to give us empowerments. He's giving so many empowerments and teachings now, also over the live stream. And what's Rinpoche's hope? Why is he doing that? Rinpoche's hope is that the disciples will engage in practice, and in this way he hopes to benefit them. And so that is why he's making all this effort and spending all this time. It's really important that you understand that, and that therefore we all make really a good use of Rinpoche's time, and we practice according to Rinpoche's wish, that we actually not waste this time, but we really practice the Dharma the way Rinpoche wishes us to practice. And so I'm not sure if all of you actually do that. If you already do that, if you're diligent in your practice, then that's excellent. And if not, then you should become diligent in your practice. And just remember that we want to really make Rinpoche's effort to benefit us really meaningful. And it becomes meaningful only then if we actually take the teachings to heart and we also practice them. We practice his teachings with great diligence. So if we do that, then we have really not wasted Rinpoche's time, and we also are fulfilling his wishes.
다시 럼부체게 신hinda 로 상고요 말이스 럼부체게 배샤 통타가 상고네 상고요 말이스 제가 하고리스 제가 된지 동안에 하고리스 야 대사 하고리스 된데 뭐 말이스 제 로마 탄제 그치 냥린 세나 냥린 시저리 상했더니 된다 절라더니 럼부체게다 뱀송 생각 요러 대인데 되네 럼부체게 레바테 도미 취지서 아마 샤바드네 데라 대나시 나토케 레바데 말바지 강토톱 세컨도스.
So when Rinpoche is making all this effort, he's not doing it because he wants to have a reputation, good reputation, or be famous, and he's also not doing it for any monetary gains and so on. So I can say that at least with like 75% certainty that I know that this is definitely not his goal. This is as much as I can know. But in any case, as disciples, we have to think about like how we can put into practice what Rinpoche taught, because this is why Rinpoche is making this effort. And so it's up to us to really do our best not to really waste the teachings that we received from Rinpoche, but we really make them meaningful according to his wish.
산이 시바나 거를 보지게 되는 왕난주나 건축진도 되는 나무는 같이는 보지 되는 제가 삼노 동시나 한가서 고가야 보다 소난 전부 되는 레이스 되는 사막 가봤다 좋아지러지스.
And then tomorrow, Rinpoche will give this empowerment on the Gunjok Jiddu, which is a Guru Rinpoche empowerment. And also it happens to be on Guru Rinpoche Day, which is the 10th day of the Tibetan month. And it just really naturally fell into place that this is the day that Rinpoche also confers this empowerment. So it's Guru Rinpoche Day. We receive the Gunjok Jiddu empowerment, Guru Rinpoche empowerment, and then it is the one who confers the empowerment is Garchen Rinpoche. So if we really think about this correctly, then we should really all see that we have such an excellent opportunity and that we have so much merit. So therefore, I encourage you all to rejoice in that.
근데 되다 그런 거 직송 요리스 상한양이 시발라 Deba Goris, Zundu Goris, Shirab Goris, Sanganyanesipala. Tenete into that Sani Wang Nang Dutnit Samake, Chingman and Gachiran Bache, Gororum Bache Imba. Tenete Nangichi Deba, Yichita, then the Chesitona, Tenis and Amjugaris. Then Deba me and then Gororum Bache Song Nayan, then Delacha. Tan Jan Jodos in the Yumariwa, then the Chepinto Songu Maris, then the Chip Deba Jimina, then Ejeta, Sonda, Muna, then the young Sayan Satan Sena, Yabu Ujuris.
Sorry. And Guru Rinpoche also said that qualities that you need in order to practice the secret mantra Vajrayana are you need to have faith, and you need to be diligent, and you need to have discriminating wisdom. And so tomorrow, when we receive the empowerment, we should develop such a faith and trust of really seeing Garchen Rinpoche as Guru Rinpoche. And if we really see him in this way, then the blessings will really enter our mind. If we cannot bring up some faith in our mind, then even though Guru Rinpoche may come and be present, it won't really help us to really change and bring about a change in our mind. So therefore, it would be good if we can really develop some faith and on this special day, make our practice and make our aspiration prayers again and again.
Oh, tene Tateva Govaris, tene Deva Yubatsam Jimmy Batten, soon to see Goyoris, Chukarena, Jitina, Chuna, Karena, soon to go Goyoris. Tene soon to meet Sanan, Chu and Drugomari, then Jitina Yungumariva, then the Katajan, soon to see Goyata, Sanhaga Chu, Zachimbo, Kichimbo, Yinayan, soon to Mazena, Tene Pinton Yungumado, Malare Logina, that the Malare Paga, Tambu Zokin Shirua, Nangona, Nansanji, Nogona, Nobsanji, Gardin, Lento, Jimpi, Gomogoba, that and the James, the Shed, the Malare Pagatanga, Pacha, Lento, Changes, Nyarded, then Zokin Gomchet, Madoa, the thing, Garena, to go Hosaris.
So first we need to have a faith, but then faith alone is also not sufficient. We also need to be diligent in the practice. And actually, we always need to be diligent, no matter what we do, whether it is a Dharma practice or anything we do in the world, really. We always need to be diligent. Even in the worldly sense, nothing is accomplished if you're not diligent. And likewise, you won't accomplish the Dharma if you're not diligent. So you need to be diligent, especially in the practice of the secret mantra, the Vajrayana. And so the Vajrayana teachings are said to be very precious and very important teachings. And even though that is the case, even though they are so profound, if we don't actually practice them with diligence, then they won't really benefit us personally. For example, in the very beginning in Milarepa's life story, at first, Milarepa, he encountered the Dzogchen teachings. And this teacher told him that this is a path where you can attain enlightenment without meditation at any time. You can attain enlightenment during the day or at night when you're sleeping. So those who are endowed with karmic fortune have no need to meditate. They can be enlightened at any time. So Milarepa thought that I must be one of those karmically fortunate ones. And so then he just basically spent his time sleeping and lying around. And obviously he did not realize the view of Dzogchen that way. So basically the point is that whatever we do, we need to be diligent.
Oh, things Sanhag Chinyams in Baltani, Shrub Golaris, Shrub Tetani, Sanhag Chu, Tamji Singing Nanga Chimbo, Don Sapo, that tended you said it, the knee, Shirap Gogri Songdoa, Gurumba check.
And then also, in addition to that, in order to practice, so also Guru Rinpoche said, in order to practice the Vajrayana, we need to possess discriminating wisdom, because the way the secret mantra, the Vajrayana, is explained is through very few words. So the teachings are concise, but they are extremely profound and very rich in meaning, actually. And so to really comprehend them, understand them, one also needs to possess discriminating wisdom.
Tenzin de la sakta, nangata, tungata, the Mambo Lambo Shinjin Sonde. Tena yitani, Saki Wall dead and atani, Samutananji. Tenda she say, Ang Jichan was a Dapan non-doggerwa. The ten sakata, nangata, tungata, de la Hakway, second number, Pen Jambe and Tazon, Una, that part of the Tazon, Malnovata general. Yena Yan Tekotun, that Nyumba, Nanto Jujendawa. Now that any Dodges and Baku, Dodges on Dona, 10 minutes, Sanjet took Kladja, Shatotan Jan de Bak, Tarao, Tatenda Ochi Mangudwa.
So the way we understand, we realize the secret mantra. For example, that's explained in the Yamantaka practice too. We understand the secret mantra in terms of there's outer symbols and signs that represent an inner meaning. So if we only focus on the outer appearance, then we will probably be mistaken in the practice. For example, an outer appearance would be like Manjushri is holding a sword, and a sword generally can be used to inflict harm, injury on others. So if one doesn't understand that, then one will be confused about the meaning. So the actual meaning is that the sword represents the cutting through of our afflictive emotions. Or Vajrasattva, for example, is holding a Vajra at his heart level. And what that represents is the Vajra here represents the heart or the mind of all the Buddhas, which is the heart essence, the mind of, for example, the 100 peaceful and the wrathful Buddhas.
Okay, the Tenita, Tenanga, the thing in Jong is in Jong, the Tene, Da Zora, Nari, Jera, Nari, Tenichin, Gadasina, Tene Gokuyoris, in Jongzojete.
So what I would like to speak about today is I would like to speak about renunciation, and we need to have renunciation no matter what practice we do, whether we practice the generation stage or the completion stage, whatever practice you do, it has to be based on renunciation.
Tene Laporta, that Ankazan, in Jong the Gosadi, in those. The Dinsan, Sang Boyaji. Be Chimbo Sing, then Tata Sing Sing, that come the Yura. Then Yamsen Mipala, then Tamake, then Deva, Jibo, Yongtak Chida, then Lu, Ma Yisong Gona, then in Bepjong Secret Yuris, then Seba Nanji, then Deva, Mambun Yong the Yuris, Deva Yankana Kansan Yuris, there in the Tenichi, that. Gejera, Chidinjela, Tapitung Marima to Tempo Maladan, Gendo Aldan, Miguel Tapitum, Gengo Chayal, Mechal Tapitung Mari, Meshaja Tapitung Mari, Tempo Malada, one so Kanakan Sanchez, Reura, Bernard Z Jab, the Zen John Jack, me, Sajandova, Sini, the Gardatin, Yagendo Mambo in the Yura, Tini. Gejere Shedinilla, Tashi Mibajwa. To retail.
So, especially I feel that nowadays, these are really days where we need to remember renunciation even more. Because the present day world is a very highly developed, technologically developed world. So there are a lot of influences around us. There's so much information that constantly, kind of distracts the mind around us. And what we do day and night really is we try to find a way to be happy and well. And for that purpose, we really strive, make the greatest effort, really with body, speech, and mind. And often we are able to accomplish our goals according to our wishes, and we are able to experience some happiness. But then there are things that no one can avoid, on whether it's the general kind of collective or personal level, and that is, for example, aging and dying. So even if, for example, even if you have a headache or a pain, you can take a medication for that. So that is a method. You can do something against it. But that's because technology and science has improved. So there's a lot of things that we can do. But then there's nothing really that we can do against aging or dying.
Chasha sengzeng de langong kormado madeba tene ninjong lo jiego mario ninjong lo jiejo le pe kable kabo yores da tese de ma tambo da chasha sengzeng de da tene tende je ne kamdala tene ninjong lo jiejo kabo yores tene ninjong lo jiejo de kechimbo chados tene niba tela tene chejota gejinilana tene nima shani nolo sungba na yin do do me patan rangin pa nyer rondo go yores tente ende tene da je ninjong go ya de kachin borindos.
So when it comes to aging and death, we are bound to step into this direction moment by moment, minute by minute, day by day, constantly. And it never stops. We're approaching our death. So even now, it seems that temporarily we might be a bit distracted by the various entertainments and the busyness and the kind of influx of information and so on around us. And so because of that too, it is quite difficult to cultivate renunciation, but it is even more so important actually because of that. And so that is because the time never stands still. It is just like the sun rising in the east and then setting in the west. As it moves from east to west, it never stays still for just even a single moment. It keeps going until it disappears. And just like that, without any interruption, we step closer to death, really moment by moment. And so that's why it is so important for us to remember renunciation.
Tene maji pala tene chuyang taba dramato. Chuyang taba dramato pala tene dreva jong matoba. That tenda chando yoris.
And so even though we might have developed some renunciation in our mind, it's mostly very weak. It's not very strong. So within one day, maybe we remember renunciation once or twice, but not all the time. And so if renunciation isn't really an integral part of our mind, then if it doesn't really arise in our mind, then we will not be able to truly accomplish our Dharma practice. And as a result of that, the actual result of Dharma practice will also not arise.
ten damjon hi kawate tindo ni ma tuma kasi tindo naro no tindo ye tan na ha so ba sa gonda do tima re ni de samato tento mo do ten de pache de chana so ten yum shi de karta janga so tendo je marina tene a chila sungru ma chudya la sungru ma tha banda wa tene chando ko yuris tene lodo na ye jula ma china de nu malaysia pin ba mi song do lodo na ba ye de jula ma china tene sanje song sha ba ju de ye de chana ga kan xie xie shi ba zam ji pin to yo ma li jula ma china
So whether or not you have developed renunciation is something you have to really see for yourself. Really, you can look at your own mind and just see in one day how much times do I really think about renunciation. If you think about death and impermanence and karma and the faults of samsara and how hard it is to find a precious human body, how often do you really think about that in any given day? I can just speak for myself. I personally have to admit, I don't think about it all the time, actually. When I take one day, any given day from morning until night, maybe I think about it once or twice throughout a day. So I'm imagining it might be not so much different for you, but maybe not. But in any case, it is because of that often we are unable to bring up the necessary diligence to practice the Dharma. So it is said that if we cannot cultivate renunciation, so that is if the four thoughts that turn the mind do not really arise within the mind, then the four classes of Tantra as taught by the Buddha will remain mere lip service. So one may be able to speak about it eloquently, but that is really useless if it hasn't really been integrated into one's mind stream.
Naso phog laguri o lejum de ngandro ke lejum de ngandro ris laguris amerikani o chamlang ngandro lamdo ten chebando cham de mag marena an lega leha yuro.
So there's maybe a bit of a difference between Tibetans and Americans. Like Tibetans always say, normally we always say, don't go against the law of karma. And then Americans say, don't break the law of the country. So that's a big difference because the thing with the law of a country is that if no one is looking, there's room for a lot of naughty things.
An book legend the South Song you like Mentan, Le Kag legend Lana Yang, legend the Soma Yoroa. Then Soma Yoris, the term Zenan, Term Hakosa Marsan Legalema Yoroa, the Jibari.
Well, nevertheless, we're still in a way the same because even though Tibetans say that you should follow karma, doesn't mean that everyone actually does follow karma. So just because we speak about it, it's just like we say we should follow the law, but it doesn't mean that everyone actually follows the law, especially if no one is looking. So in that regard, it's probably the same.
Malarepa ke mapam manjar koni kong nyeng na se midin sin ni mo tender rinwa nginyo chen le kwala la chetzo gola ta kwala la ngimjong den le jum de le yichi chine tening mena to chu sha ma che ma don na dan deng ma song san tender che ngono wa teni chu dra teni
So when we are able to cultivate authentic renunciation, then how do we become? Then we become just like Milarepa. And Milarepa already had this state of mind before he met his guru Marpa. Before he met Marpa, he was so he felt so much renunciation to that, with regard to samsara, that all he could think of is Marpa. And it made him restless during the day, and it didn't let him sleep during the night. So strong was his renunciation and his trust in karma. And he felt that I cannot help but practice the Dharma. There's no way I cannot practice. And it's with that attitude that he was able to attain enlightenment in a single lifetime, a single body.
Okay, tene marpanji, tene marpa damare nang de tene kapung na jiwo la marme jiwo na tene lunga is jik mangor na che de tene dawa mangbo la tene nang doa.
And then after Milarepa had encountered Marpa and then eventually received his teachings, so one teaching that Marpa gave Milarepa was like an exercise was to meditate in a cave with a burning butter lamp sitting on his head, on his crown. And he instructed him to remain unmoving with the body, speech, and mind until the flame is exhausted. And so, since he was quite large, he spent in that state actually for a long time, maybe several months.
Gong yesuk sandawa. Delendo. Tene malare pake gola mame yaktoke do gong tanje tadan jarjundowa. Tendo chik tamjung dawa kesag dong dawa mariwa. Kesag zimchun dawa janjangriwa.
So we have to also know that Milarepa's story is not like some kind of like a fairy tale, like a true story. It's a real story of a real person that was alive in this world. We know where Milarepa was born, and we know where Milarepa had practiced meditation, and where he really like established his, the foundation, his first meditation, or the place, for example, where he had the butter lamp on his crown. Actually, no, the butter lamp was inside this like stone vessel, and that can still be seen today. It still exists today. So it's all a real story. It's not some kind of like a legend, some kind of story like the King Gesa stories, the kinds of miracle stories, and so on. This is Milarepa's story is a real story, a story of a real person's life.
Okay. Tene tan nang chi nyam zin len serpa la tene tambo tuba samba gomba som zin yores. Tene song yores. Sanje ge song tene tambo te sanje ge song bi yong na lobji te. There is. Tene niba te nam tene don nam sambe tin la pamni. Ne tene nishi ni gogo yores. 담보 투바 조저때 마시바 시바르시바 라더니 투바라라 답변은 메게와죠 젤렌도 더니 레짐데 젤렌도 대담보 하고 말하는 거죠. 근데 마시바 투바 마시바 시바르시바 라더니 안 하고 요래서 투바.
And so when we first practice the Buddha Dharma, we go through 3 stages. First, we need to listen and learn. Then we reflect, and then we meditate. So in the beginning, listening refers to learning or studying the scriptures, the teachings of the Buddha. And then through reflection, secondly, we must come to a certainty. So we must be completely convinced in our understanding of those teachings. And in order to do that, first we need to study, we need to learn about the Buddha's teachings. So the hearing or the learning is for the sake of knowing, like making known that which we don't know yet. So for example, in the beginning, we don't know about, for example, what are the 10 non-virtuous actions, and we don't really know about karma, cause and effect. And so first we have to educate ourselves and know about that. And that's the purpose of like studying or hearing.
Shoot a song, do la sambe teni nishin hili sigo yuris. Teni tumba chumdin like a song yura, Gehong takin kenam, Chesikit Darvis Aginta. Libertala, Naika, Lamar Sasuka Sermis on the tumba chumdin like a Congress song chu, song can be chute Latini Chansoka, Gehong Tamja Chansoka, Teni, Jebave, Tubave, Sambave, that in the Ven Yuris. Chansoka, and it in the Rindo, then the Rindo is sana. To some consumption, then Jebasi Choveris. There's a Monden over Rimasoma. Then the secret is.
And then after we have learned, then we need to reflect. And reflection means that we contemplate what we have learned. Is it really true? And how is it true? And so on. So until you come to a certainty, you conclude that this is how it is. You ascertain the teachings yourself. And the Buddha, Shakyamuni himself said that this is what we should do. He said to his monks, assembly of monks, that you have to, you should examine my teachings as you would polish a piece of gold. You cut it, you take it apart, you burn it, you polish it until you get to its essence. So you should actually, it is okay to question my teachings, to question if they are correct or not. It is okay to question everything and really see, is it true or not? And so through the analysis, analyzing the teachings, you must come to like a personal conclusion. So you should not just blindly believe in something I say.
Okay, then Tangake Jeba Samutan, Tenit, and the Tina Pandu, Teni, Taring Nishi, Nigeris, Tangin the Rindos, Sanning Nishi, the thing he bought something the chopa, Teni, gone, Zonata, Sambatella, Teni, the Gongo Yures. Then it take gone na, Teni, Tobe Darter, Tugi Inter. Then ran ye, don't you to batch a young Yores. Then in Nag Semla, Nishi Timbo ni, Mine Giovanni Battening, Minute that then a window Saneke. Then thought, they told it, then in Malasiana, la Pinto. Then ran ye, then don't have them to Yores.
And so then, so first we listen and then we analyze, which is the reflection, and we analyze and reflect until we come to certainty, until we are completely confident. We find confidence that we truly understand and believe it on the basis of our own analysis. So you come to a conclusion where you know this is definitely true because you found it out yourself. But then that alone is also not enough. Then the third part is that it also has to be practiced. And so we practice it through meditation. It is said that through realizing, through practicing and realizing, you liberate yourself, and through compassion, you liberate others. So through practice, the benefit of yourself and others comes about spontaneously. So once you have gained this certainty, complete stability in your confidence, your assurance, that is unchanging, about this is how it really is. But once you have reached that point, then that's really the point actually where what you then say to others will be of real benefit. And so this is how the benefit of yourself and others comes about. For example, it's like the teacher gives the disciple a piece of fruit and says it is sweet. But the sweetness is something that the disciple has to experience themselves. So the guru can hand that fruit into the disciples' hands, can place it into their hands, but then the disciples themselves must actually eat the fruit. Only when they eat it can they know, is it really sweet, or how sweet is it? So it's something that we have to experience ourselves.
Okay, then jasela lenana tambotela tambo mario ta gotana jasela lengola pinden jone zobe sanjena tamchu drole song de yan de la lin shi la ra lepe jasena de la lin shi par sa song do de chu drop gona de kandu drop go drupang di shi jete de gichin boris tenten ni jasena tamje ka de jasela logo na de la jasesa chu samba nam je la lin jenda se in
the beginning of the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says that the source, the Buddhist teachings are the source of all the benefit and happiness, but this benefit and happiness depends on knowing the Bodhisattva's practices, knowing how to practice. So when it comes to Dharma practice, it's important that we know how to practice the Dharma. And so then once we know how to practice the Dharma, then only then are we able to actually practice according to how the Bodhisattvas have practiced.
Teni chuchi po mari, lega chasan tenderewa, lega tela tambon gozo, teni party yong, tama teni kama na tambon kama gozo, teni kama zon, teni kama sama, do chochong rao, sama chago yoro.
So any Dharma practice begins with the motivation, no matter what you practice. So we need to have that in place, and then we need to know how to do the practice. And then we also need to know what kind of result we want to find. So the Dharma practice must be complete in the three aspects of the preparation, the actual practice, and the conclusion. And it's not just Dharma practice, actually everything we do must be complete. So we start an activity, then we prepare an activity. For example, if you're building a house, you prepare first you build the foundation, and then in the middle, secondly, then you build the house. And the result of that, the fruit that you want to gain from building a house, is that you're ready to move in and live in that house.
Tene te pa jiren le namjo de pa jiren le te jiren ke men ta pa yin ris tama to pa je wala jiren men ta pa yin te yin de tene da nga sen kang pin ben da wo te xia ri te yin de tene da lama sen lam dan den ba lo ma te ba dan den ba ni nin zon na tene ju la hala da ji to ba je yo ba ris teni perna jichin so yung de sa da nani pa lan ja sha jin do wa tena yin ba ris teni lama sen lab da den ba so ma te ba da den ba yo na ten da ji yung ji yo ris
Then Tenzin Khenpo had said that what we call instruction, like an essential instruction, is anything that is being said that comes from a mind of benefiting others. And then what we call the so-called generation stage, the visualization of the deity, is something that purifies or transforms our ordinary thoughts. And so now for that to happen, you need a guru who can speak in a way that benefits others, so a guru who possesses blessings, and a disciple who possesses faith and devotion. When these two come together, then realization will arise in the disciple's mind, just like when the causes and conditions come together of the elements and the sky, then a rainbow will appear in the sky. So just like that, when the blessings of a guru and the faith of a disciple come together, then realization will arise.
Then Lama Sinab Dimba Yina Yang, Lom Jula Tepa, Tangijim, Yang Dabashi Mina, the Ping Tokabores. Lama Laya, then it to Jula Sancho Sanda, Donica Dawa Mina, then it Majinda Ping Tokabo in Paris.
So even though the guru possesses blessings, if the disciple has no faith and no trust, then it will be very difficult for the guru to benefit that disciple. So the guru must be, on the other hand, if the disciple has devotion, but then the guru, he doesn't have any bodhicitta and no realization of emptiness, it will also be difficult to benefit the disciple.
Dharma can sojong mishipa, Yana can pachu mazijeks, Dharma yabu gongshi mina, then yigil down on the marsh, she and a pinto your mares. Then it tolam, that lam as a usual, then tolam the lam Sumbanda won't say tolam, langa yura langa, tolam the lam sumba yes, then tolam with dimba matona, tolam Tawa Mina, then Mashason Dolan Poa, Jana Pinto, you Marizondoa.
Milarepa also said that if one doesn't, if one has not like really meditated upon and internalized the instructions that one is sharing, it is useless to just say some words just following a text. So the teachings have to be internalized through practice. And also Milarepa said that only someone who has attained the path of seeing, so there's those 5 paths, and the path of seeing is the 3rd path. So only someone who has attained the path of seeing can benefit others who have deceased, who have died through Powa practice.
Oh, there in the Shina Yang, Lom Jola Pinto Cowboy in Batang. The Yena Yang, that's all so. Debata, Zundel Toyores. Debata Zundel Mina, Sanje Nasola Kansia, you Marida, Maris. Then Garrison Yorisina, then Deba made Nanama, Capuchin and Minjong, some met Sipala. Then you can put Jejo Maris, then Deba Mina, then it should go your Maris. 강의서나 대바면 줄 주고 말이야. 근데 잡선으로 고향 요 말이. 근데 대바 제벌세 봐라. 당보 라랑 수지 줄라. 님종 걸로 유주도 가르침보. 레스.
So therefore, even if even if one knows how to say, how to teach, if one doesn't have those qualities, it still will be hard to benefit disciples. And then from the disciples part, for a disciple, they need to possess faith and diligence. If they lack that, then even the Buddha himself cannot help them. It is said that a person who doesn't have any faith is like the seed of a flower that is being burned, a burned seed. And from a burned seed, no sprout can grow. So if we lack faith, we will not be able to practice the Dharma truly. So faith is really important, and faith is therefore said to be the entrance gate to the Buddha Dharma, the entrance gate to the refuge. So therefore faith is extremely important.
Teni chulan yubar sibara tangpo nimjong de teni be Garchen po yinpa. Ta teni song yores. Te yin de teni nimjong de teni gadu yin na samo tong. Teni zangi tang dedo nama tambe kangla yin teni takwa tang, takwa me pa. Tu tada madaba gompa. Teni tada minsan zinpa. Teni nimjong tang johe ji, sheda tang payu. Tenin duze mata pada COVID dongala samne seda drapa nyamba ki sigo nyamde teni samutango yore song.
And so Patrul Rinpoche says that renunciation is what really makes you enter the path of true Dharma practice. That's why it is so important. That is why you have to think about it all the time. And whatever it is that arises in the meantime, whether it is something positive or negative, or whether you feel happy or sad, whatever appears, whatever arises, nothing will last, nothing is permanent. And no matter what arises, therefore, sustain heedfulness, conscientiousness, and with conscientiousness sustain a mind of renunciation, always remembering the impermanence of this life and the suffering nature of samsara, and therefore take a commitment, resolving that I will dedicate this life to practice.
Oh, tendra yin de teni tendra samno yang tantuna teni tusu rere nima rere yin teni nimjong ke lo te teni yang dawa kin teni yarje yung yore es. Nimjong ke lo la teni chunglam namba ye tone gadu yin na yang tenji de Garchen po yin ba ta teni samno tan gomne gompalan rogo re ma to teni ang chom ni nyo khayang dawa teni yo ma re es.
And then it said that, so therefore, think about it, bring it up in your mind all the time, throughout the day, and every hour, every day. And in this way, like the waxing moon, your practice will improve. So it is said that throughout the 4 activities, in whatever you do, basically, remember renunciation again and again. And then it's not enough to just think about it, and also put it into practice and meditate. Renunciation is something you have to cultivate. It's nothing that you can buy on the market.
Ronyon Dombasi, Tenden Dogondo, Shumela Repa, Malarepa, Tachirang Mando, Tata Chirang La Nim Jongta, then check Zogolota, Chu drops on the Katanin, Mobachimondos, Te Nichirang, that was on the song at the Nichirang. Tata ngim jong tang, tini chuk sem yu ba te, tan mi ba chan ro gari song do wa. Te kanda chi yong ro gari se, tini chang tong ji rik ji, mangbo yong gari, tini chuk sem tang, tini ngim jong ka sem la ro gari song do wa. Tata nga song gana ngim jong che kabu rin do wa. Ta la ba nan tata zamba ling jakab chama yu de ba na gin, ri de yu ra, gari go, iPhone na ta, gari kasi te, then drama and Tonju Rigjo, Samjo, Tinjuma, what he said. The name in Jonga Lot, Jacabo, Rindua. Malare, other Chomban, Kong, and your low Mambola, Gom Jabs at the Tanon, Malare Pake, or China Solo Mandon, Tonju Rigjo Mambo Yontani, Nim Jongta, Chuk Sen Land or something. Kong Nambal Tendasa, low Mambola, Gomja Yosef Tanon, Gangayuna, Naso Lel Land over. Depending in Jong, that's not on you there. Garchen Borindos. That take up Rechong, but Jigusang or Sona. That Jonkang, you remit Pajas, Sakang and Chankang, you cover take ups. Jonkang, Jurua. Paja, you're saying to Namtana Den and Jonkang do. Sakang Paja, you're not saying to them, eh? Nasirwa. That the Renkas and cook Laban and the cook Zambel Jacob Sama Dutch window. Then I that Tata Sings Gangs had the then in Jong Lord. Jia couple, then not only much raging there. To so raging the in Jong call a son of man to the city of the big kitchen in the whole lodge.
One time, after Milarepa and Rinpoche, so Rinpoche was Milarepa's disciple, after they had already practiced in retreat together for a long time, for many years, and one day Rinpoche said, now I want to travel to central Tibet, to Uzang, to beg for alms and so on. Yeah, and Milarepa said, you shouldn't go because right now your renunciation is so strong, your Dharma practice is so strong. If you go to central Tibet, you might lose it, your renunciation and your practice. And Rinpoche didn't really understand, and he asked, why would I lose it? And Milarepa said, it's because when you travel around, you will see so many different things and encounter so many different things that it's very easy to lose your Dharma mind, your renunciation. So you will lose it. Right now, it's excellent. So not right now you've practiced. So it's better to stay and not go. And so now we are speaking about those days of Milarepa and Rinpoche. Nowadays, for example, if we think about the kind of distractions that we are influenced by, it's everywhere. It's in our hands. Like we have an iPhone, for example, and just by looking at our iPhone already, we don't have to go anywhere. We can see so many different things that constantly distract our mind and change our mind. And so because of that, it's so difficult also to cultivate real renunciation. And now when we think about Milarepa and Rinpoche, at that time, they actually had already meditated for so many years. And still, Milarepa said, don't go because you will lose your renunciation, you will lose your Dharma practice, don't go around. So because he recognized how difficult it is to keep your renunciation, even if you have it, it's really not easy. And if it was even difficult for them in those days, then we can clearly understand it's not so easy for us. It's very easy, even if we have a moment of renunciation, we can lose it very easily. In those days of Rinpoche, Milarepa, what Milarepa perhaps had in mind was that maybe the Rinpoche was going to stay in various hotels like guest houses and so on. So apparently they had guest houses at that time, but they didn't even have all the other entertainments like restaurants and so on. And still, Milarepa was worried about him losing his renunciation. And now, for example, for us, we just need to look at our iPhone and we can see how quickly we become distracted by all kinds of things. So right now it's extremely difficult for us to cultivate renunciation. And that's why it's even more important that we really think about it all the time, every day and every hour.
Dhambo Sanjay Sumpe, Ka, Pardo Jinjong Kepa Namjik, Tinju, Lama Koma Namjik, Danga, Latan, Tini, Dati, Jene, Tini Tamjur Milutoba, Dea, Kabo in Bata, Tini Be, Jio, Chang Sola, Samaya Tangupa, Tini Milutona Yang, Milutoban Dea, Tini Jimmy the Soma Maipa. Then Jolopa la Sama Maipa. Then Gavin Drevashila, then Young Yujan, then Ginger Garan Kinjin Indu, then Masala, Dunta Jaga, Nima Sha Jaga, Mashabas, Yamba Dinsumi Baris.
So then, how should we then cultivate or think about renunciation? So we begin with looking at the learning in the teachings of the Buddha, looking at his actual words, and then also looking at the various commentaries composed by the great scholars, and then also by listening to the instructions, the oral instructions by the great masters. So we receive those teachings, we listen, and we reflect on, we analyze them, we reflect on them, so that we really understand actually how hard it is to find a precious human body. For example, we know that by understanding it in terms of the causes and the illustrations and in terms of like numbers and comparisons and so on, we can understand how difficult it is to find a precious human body. And so then, therefore, through learning the scriptures, we learn that this precious human body is not something that we just happened to have received for no reason or for any kind of contrary reason. There is a very precise reason that led to this precious human birth. And so that is an immense amount of virtuous actions. And then having found this precious human body that's so hard to find, its nature is that because it is physical, it is subject to disintegration. So we will die one day. We just don't know when. Nobody knows for sure if they will die next week or the next day. Nobody has this assurance.
Tene medo tamche nani medo pema karpo zole sare da te ya kiri songdo.
Sanghera.
Sanjika.
And the Buddha said, of all the footprints, an elephant's footprint is the biggest. Of all the states of mind, reflecting on impermanence is the best. Of all the flowers, the white lotus flower is the most beautiful. Kadamba kishi chigyanam kashi. In the past, there was one Kadamba Geshe whose disciple asked him, what is the main practice that I should do? And he said that the most important practice is to cultivate or to meditate on impermanence, because impermanence is what will first make you enter the path of Dharma practice. And then in the middle, it will be your companion to encourage you to keep on going in your practice. And then in the end, it will be the cause of leading to like realizing the unborn nature.
Oh, tene jet on kapa ke lamrem nam nambo de la nginjong ya yoro. Tambo nginjong. Tene sancho sen. Tene yang ta patawa. Tene da nginjong zo jet kitchen ko cha de yores.
And also Tsongkhapa, when he organized the Lamrim, the graduated path, he actually, it consists of 3 sections. And the first one, he said, must be renunciation. Secondly is bodhicitta. And third is the correct view. So we can see that renunciation is really most important.
Yena Sanin Jayon la Payura. Then Sani Jayumi Jaja, Samalangi Bami Paris. Then I get in Jitinja come there. Then Patena Tada Timbari, that then it never never drop Jerry Ranki. That and then make up Deva Tamchia, then use them. Latin and Dongalan John Ranki. Then Nanjin Batani then I give us no Lada, Jura, Yura, Ya Gung Tungji, Te Tamcha, then Javaranking, Tung the Yuris, Te the Tene, Te Tamjik and Asol Madaba Tung Yuris. Te the Nata so Itaya Chisa, God Chisa Sando Yayumaris, Taya Chison, Yagaris, and Dagun. Te Madaba Tung Yuris, and the Madaba is and some of Tango Yuris.
We always say to each other, "I'll see you tomorrow," but actually nobody knows for sure. Nobody has 100% certainty if we will really see each other again tomorrow. It just looks that way to our perception that in this world everything is somewhat lasting and stable, but actually that is not the case at all. Everything is actually constantly changing. And it seems that temporarily maybe we experience some bliss, some happiness, but that changes quickly into suffering. So everything is always changing and it is impermanent. For example, when we look at the 4 seasons of summer, of winter, spring, and summer and fall, actually the change of the seasons actually teach us, they show us impermanence, a constant change. But we don't even recognize that. We just basically say it's summer or now it's winter. But what actually happens is that we are actually given like a lesson. Actually, nature shows us that everything is impermanent. And then we just need to recognize that.
Chige namchi donga kichungo chimbo yege rangin chi yinpa tang, teni rang soso ka awa tang amni pama punchi, tang nyin nyin zhar, tang chi mangbo chi xe yoba riwa, tang nga samha ko yinpa risi. Tena la samu tang na mada ba gomchi tang, ten tambi chula nintin seko ko yo risi.
And then if you think about it from a personal perspective, as human beings, we all go through the sufferings of birth and aging, sickness and death, and also witnessing that in others, those who are close to us, like our uncles and aunts and our parents or other relatives, other friends and so on, people who are dear to us. We have all seen many of them pass away, and that also shows us impermanence and also should encourage us to make an effort in Dharma practice.
Tene chudubjala, tene sani drop, nani drop, dawajima drop, lojima drops, and lelo, tene secure wangdom, masongba. Gana gabo you pick up chudro goyore, don't do boy you pick up chudro goyore, then tadanya and chudro go san tene. Dukije goyores. Tene dan kakik sando, oh, tada lega mangondo, lula na samendo, senla kangamendo, ta. Lo kake la chumadam nandixari, dan samgres. Tenda tene some norsomaris, tene chijala korami paris. Tene chijala korami sade, tene po kake maingana shanto yori, kake po some machiso mani shanto yori. Katan sheba shego maris, sene some of ha kongo yores. Tene malare pa karisong yorisina, le lurangin to mandrop, gavela la tumbarchi, sondo.
And then when it comes to Dharma practice, and sometimes we procrastinate and we say that I'm going to, not today, but I will practice tomorrow, or maybe I will practice the day after tomorrow, or I will do something next month or next year. That's laziness and procrastination. So you should think that no matter what, I will practice it. So if you're doing really well, practice the Dharma. If you're having a hard time, practice the Dharma. So think that right now, whatever is the circumstance, I must practice the Dharma. Now some people maybe say that right now I'm really busy, I have a lot of things to do, because now I have to do those things because I'm not physically sick and I'm mentally okay. So therefore I will practice Dharma maybe in a few years, but first I will do those things. it should be okay that way. So people kind of estimate that this is a good plan. But that's actually quite mistaken, because death doesn't follow a certain order. Some people die already in the wombs of their mothers. Some die the moment they are born. Nobody really knows when we are going to die. It's completely uncertain. And it's actually something that we don't really need to discuss, talk about. Everyone really knows that actually. And so therefore Milarepa had said, do not fall into laziness, but practice the Dharma with diligence.
Tene da lobong tayang ke kari song do sena jakar ke lobong jingsari sa hang dan thore na jin la la ma xiawan ga ki chu jan thong ang tu ang mu de te song sa song do ja ke lobong je ke tene dan zambel lang sa tho dan dana tene so jin sha ma xia len zo le chang ke ko song es o chu ke tu song es 주고 태성상도 있었지 마션 라리선 된다성도 되네 대연데 되네 되바타만네 장조베란이 진인바 당 다된데 있은 되바타마 장조베란이 진인바다 되네 파담바 산제케 자창 나다 손든 중본자 니상 타모마지 등레바 성도 자창 나다 손든 중본자 자산은 총강은 만조만나 이리스 된 니상 타모마지 되면와스 다 초바디아만도스 자상된 마다 손든 좀본다 버리스 다 내감 정도不搞좀 초바디아만도스 된 다육 단로 그리스 사마
There's this Indian acharya, Indian master, Dayang, I think it's Ashwagosha. And so he said that, have you heard of anyone in this world who was born but didn't have to die? Or do you even have doubts about that, or even wonder about that? Have you ever heard about anyone like that? Anyone who was left behind without having to die? And then he said that everything that comes together must part in the end. That's the nature of things. And then Padampa Sangye had said the relationships between husbands and wives are as impermanent as meeting people in a marketplace. For this reason, don't fight with each other, because you wouldn't go fighting with the people in the marketplace. You don't know how much time you will have, and in the end, you will separate.
Teni jeven tamanen jeven tamanen shandro rangi teni zikban tamanen jendro rangi sakban tamanen sendro rangi ta jang zhe xiao na jang ta biyong jendro ge wa din do xiao ma wa lo jia chan ne teni nga sa jik so no go yu de sao de se dan taman jendro ya le wa chama teni song to.
And so it is said that everything that's born will die, and everything that is built will collapse, and everything that's accumulated will be exhausted, will come to an end. For example, if you're building a wall, it won't stay forever. Like centuries later, the wall will have collapsed. Nothing will always stay. Or whatever we accumulate, whatever things we accumulate, in the end, they will be scattered.
Tomne dambe chudan trebanda ya ranga ngu sonam sakwen drewe imbala ngu sin gogo yoris tene menu tona ya sanje songba na yi tene chobe jinen nyong chebe jinen mang tene namchen chami chi jing se samcho dang xian zhou la tene chi jena nge ba me de tene chebe kapso zhou dang ganza jopam jur 나타나서 강요 잠에 페인바 라니 찌버드니 Manang ni patong bana yin rogo go yores. Manang ni Marnana pat yora po banana. That limb anayi. Mate landora pat the tondora. Tenek Jasela Linana, Yorens open. Yoren open Zahi Sosandar. Bebe drop and Nordic or the legend room, Kanaki room purple. Send a lot of Jasela lay, so what Atena is on the.
And then also it is said that who is one's enemies and who is one's friends is changeable, is changing, is uncertain, and death, when death will occur, is uncertain. And so therefore, don't be distracted and lazy, but practice the Dharma with diligence, and recognize that it took a tremendous amount of merit to find this precious human body and also to encounter the Dharma teachings. However, and if we don't put the teachings into practice, even though we have found a precious human body, we should not take too much certainty in this human body, but put the teachings into practice, because the human existence is impermanent. There are so many conditions that actually will lead to our death, and there are so few conditions that are actually life supporting. So many more things can lead to our death than things that lead to our life or sustain our life. And even the things that sustain our lives, like food and so on, or medicine, can turn into the causes of our death. So that, and then on top of that, the timing of our death is completely uncertain. And then when it comes to death, when we die, then nothing can help us. No companion, no friend, no money, no wealth, nothing can support us. At that time, it is like you're like a piece of hair inside a butter lamp, inside the oil, like taking out a piece of hair from the oil lamp. So you extract that, basically. So the oil stays, but the hair goes. And in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says, long associated companions will part from each other. Wealth and possessions obtained with effort will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will cast aside the guest house of the body. Letting go of this life is the Bodhisattva's practice.
That Shiva capsule, the need leg comes up like Mario Tanton. Ni Shiva capsule, the leg comes up like a Jason Rankin, the dog Yongoma, Yuzam, then Tata Nini, then you want to Masongba, Lenny by massage the Garchen Borindos. Then Chin one on the Carson Lucina, Chata, Shedan, the Mokta, Techi Len Megeva, Megeva, Donata. And
then when we die, we will follow whatever karma we have accumulated, and then we'll have to experience whatever happiness or suffering we have created. And so that is why right now it is important to not become controlled by the afflictive emotions and not accumulate negative karma driven by them. In the precious garland, it says, everything you do with a mind of attachment, anger, or ignorance is non-virtuous. Everything that is non-virtuous leads to suffering, and suffering is an existence in the miserable states of samsara.
Oh, then macha shedan the me. Techi Lene Gewai, Gele Dendo Tamchi, Tang, Jiva on the devil, Ne Sondo.
Then it says, in the same text, and then everything you do with a mind that is not attached and not angry and not ignorant is virtuous. And if you create virtue, whatever is virtuous, will lead to happiness as a result, and therefore virtuous karmas lead to birth in happy states of existence.
Tene sanje ke dimba kenana tene joma ka pala jeru ka jumi pasong yorowa ten de le jumde la tsong si je Garchen bo yin ba ta tene an lebja pa le song dan te yong sang sarwa le jin ta ke le nam ne ka bar ja yang chu ma sa cho jin de la pa pa na reven ni de mi ban jers le de na ba mi ban de tene sa da do da Todan Chumana Yamibe, Ran Seba Rana Miba Song Yus. There in the Le Mege Lunga is on Jigone, Saga Yude, then it Luda Nada, Luda Nat, then Yopo Tower, send the Jawa Tower radio race. Then it dim by the dim by Yanana, Numba Kunjonta, Ledge Kunjon is on yours. Then Tambo Numbachi, Yundu. New Mumbakunjong, New Mumbachiba Latine, then it less I on the ledge kunjong, then less out Balatine, then Yonko Yusam, then New Mumba, more shine, there one the Mashova Sijade, Garchen Borindos.
And then in the Buddhist teachings on the Four Noble Truths, in there, he also said that if you do not avoid the cause, you will not be able to avoid the result. Therefore, it's important to consider karma. And in the Prajna Paramita in 100 verses, it says, whoever creates karma will be the one experiencing its results, and its results will never just disappear, become spoiled, even if aeons pass by. So whatever karma one has created, one will have to experience it all oneself. The karma that you have created, it will not be experienced by a rock or a piece of earth. You can't transfer it to a rock or earth. And also it's not your child that will experience it. It's also not your wife that will experience it for you. You will experience it yourself. So therefore, it is said that the body and the speech are actually just the servants, while the mind is actually the king. Therefore, since the mind is the king, it's important to not allow the mind to become controlled by afflictive emotions. So also in the teachings on the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha spoke about the origin of suffering. So there is the origin of the afflictive emotions and the origin of karma. So first there is the afflictive emotion that arises in the mind, and then you become controlled by it, and that leads to the origin of creating karma. And then if karma is created, suffering is experienced as a result. That is why it's important that you recognize the afflictive emotions and do not become controlled by them.
Then sender dorna geva imba, sendorna deva imba. Then the song yours. Sender what journal, then the lunga is ranking to your child you got down. Then Zambel Langdana, then deva chagonare, Nasana shibde chagonare, Tambo, or that rank assembly shide charge to Garchen boy in Batan. Then a non assembly shibde mina. Then sending Sonja Gango say, but I'm telling you the chat of Marisondo Lama Tanjik. Then they in the ranks and the charge Garchen boy in Baris. Then just in Lanina, Rankishan, draw materna, Sir draw talking Pevarger. There's something in Jim Maponka Rajunda by Jarsela in Sondoa. Then answer you is.
And the Buddha said, completely tame your own mind. So that's most important when it comes to practicing the Buddha's teachings, is taming our own mind. If you tame your own mind, your mind will naturally be in in a happy state, and you will naturally create virtue in whatever you do. If you tame your own mind, then naturally your body, speech, and mind becomes peaceful. So if you want to bring about peace, happiness in a country, for example, or peace and happiness in a family situation, in order to bring about peace and happiness in any environment, first you need to create peace and happiness in your own mind. If you do not create peace in your own mind, then you can't really bring about lasting peace and happiness by trying to stop, for example, like the attacks or the weapons on an external level by others. That's what the masters, the lamas of the past have said. If we want to stop violence and so forth, it has to start with our own mind and bringing peace and happiness into our own mind. So in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says, unless you tame the enemy of your own hatred, outer enemies will only increase. And therefore, defeating that enemy with the army of love and compassion is the Bodhisattva's practice. So for now, I'll stop the teachings here.
Thank you.
We will now take a 25-minute break, and we will see you back at 4 p.m. Arizona time.
So why he did is
Yeah. New but tini Sancho Sankandor Bawatan. Tene Shabakapso Yang Lumi Jantin dancing the Pachawanke, Sentana. Tene need that Mana Nanji, the Dogasawa. Yonga Yozam, Sentola Tini, give it Pacha Yaguba. That just on those.
So we must tame our afflictive emotions with bodhicitta. And when we die, then even though we have we don't have our body any longer, the mind still is under the control of self-grasping and the habitual imprints. And as a result of that, even after we have died, we will continue to experience happiness and suffering, all kinds of feelings, just like we do in a dream. And that's why we have to form a virtuous habitual imprint in our minds.
Tene Tatan Zamberlena, that's so Chichong down in the Pacha Yujam. Tene Mary in the Mr. Tatan Shirap Chimbo Yubatan. Tene Nekap, they were Chungish and Go Manko, but in Tarpatu, City to Kachimbo in Bares.
Nekap Karama.
They were Chungi, Gonkorma Deva. Tarpatu, City to Kachimbo in Bares.
And so in this world, there are all kinds of different living beings, as limitless living beings, large and small. And among them, the human being is endowed with a greater level of intelligence, like a discriminating wisdom. And so for that reason, because we have this abilities as a human beings, it's important that we do not become distracted by smaller, meaningless experiences of pleasure, but rather we should really set our heart toward attaining liberation.
You do the Mount Tata do some the yen, Tanka Yoris. Some the Mount Tata do some Tanka Yori, then Lega, Data see Yoris. Then it tendang and then send the chick wall or some Tanshana, then you want to watch it and Jiganam Chukadunga, young go by Indu. Then it died million the top lander jene she, then Tamba chip drip a cup, then my shower. Si gojete, teni kachimo, dan teni yang ting gojeris. Teni party zasik nanakari song yorisina. Jema dala jine pardon chartetes. Cela lomi lelo panzen. Cela lomi lelo panzen. Tesam gomsom mayang lam lan yok. Nansen lan la kusong lan munjurne. Milil. Milil linje topete sunde. Chanana yue. Okay. Rasa. Mele linje topa te sunde, yingma lam na dupe tu mi, song doa si. Tende yendu, ten sanje je kompang, drup guna mail tin ma to, yin le tin na sanje je kompang drup nu de marong te, tene tev yin mese kangwan soba lompu, yapo je tom na chibe, yapo je tope chi de, ge je zanya, do long me pa, nyingsin pa me de, central tang kangar. Tene yapo je tom na sampe rewa. Then Mandopa Yong Yong Sam the Topa, then the red dog and a message don't know you do. Then Tanzon, you could give it the bottom ticket, then in Coante, don't have your game, song you Paris, member job, Romyak and Dan, simple length to do get some type of thing. To Georgia Sang. Then that was saying, then Dabachula, Nawa Tang the Lang, Gawa Che the Sen, Zundana your bodies.
And so it is also, though, because as human beings we possess this intelligence, that we also have an ability to think a lot. So as human beings, we think all the time. Our thinking is really vast. We think about the past, the present, and the future. And then really, in accordance with our thinking, we also act in limitless different ways. And if we only think about, if the things that we think about are only concerning this life, then we are really wasting away our life. And so as a human being, we are all bound to the experiences of birth, old age, sickness, and death. And also we have the opportunity as a human being to understand the teachings as to what we should do and what we shouldn't do. We have an opportunity to practice the Dharma, and therefore it's very important to not let it go to waste and to remember this again and again. In the root verses of the 6 bardos for the bardo of birth or living, it says, "Alas, now when the bardo of this life is dawning upon me, I will abandon laziness for which life has no time, enter undistracted the path of study, reflection, and meditation, making perceptions and mind the path, and realize the 3 kayas. Now that for once I have attained a human body, this is not the time to remain in the ways of distraction." So now we have found a human body whereby we can actually attain the state of enlightenment. And it is not a different body, and it is nothing is transferred. Everything that we do is experienced on our own body. It is also no one else that is like harming us. Everything depends on ourselves and our own actions. And so since this life will come to an end, and we have found it now for just a moment, actually, it is important to make the best use of it day and night, and especially not to spend one's life thinking about all kinds of things, worrying about things. For example, often we think in terms of we want to get something. We have a lot of hopes, hope of getting what we want, or if we are afraid that something bad will happen, we are worried, and so on. So this is how how our life passes by, while we're just thinking about our hopes and our fears and are worried about things. So basically, life passes by in a state of worry and hope and fear. And actually, already the masters of the past have told us that samsara has the nature of suffering. That's just how it is by nature. They said that samsara is like a fire pit, or it is like a swamp of corpses, or it is like an island of monsters, or it is like a nest of poisonous, venomous snakes, and so on. So we already know that samsara has the nature of suffering. And so therefore, knowing that and now having the opportunity to practice the Dharma, we should really practice the Dharma with diligence, really forbearing any difficulty for the sake of the Dharma.
Okay, then the gumbo packet, then send the pinbats on the Madawa. Then the David Sancho Drabasi Bate, then Ranjing Rang the Cheva Yinson, Ranjing Rang Cheva, Chucha Yura. Gumbo packet, just hold on. That Jim is Lancho. Then song you are.
And then Gampopa said in the Precious Garland of the Supreme Path, so there is one section that is called the 10 dharmas of or ways of being kind to oneself. And so one is that so in this life, to bring about the benefit, even just in this life, then the happiness of self and others, remember impermanence and strive toward lasting happiness.
Okay. Then 나서 참여하던 시설이 이제 감대 then 접하고 때나 then 도미 다짐이 봐. 랑게 삼바나긴 접투되다 가보 인들이스. 대한테는 말했었나 동아래 요바리스. then 산 거역 소발론 주라 강아미장 낭 선대 뉴몬보방도 현도가 요드 요잠 then 조심히 봐. 리스. 대 컨트롤하면 잠보는 Kogo Tsanya, Google Sesarman, Medin Jim Chujaran Samla, Control Machek, Kogo Tsanya, Jala Jayuna, Nigo, iPhone, iPad, iPad, computer, Jayun, Mang Dondo Yersen, Kogo Tsanya, Google Sesarman, Medin Jim Chujaran Samla, Simplon Rondo Stan, Kuchoki Bonder, Lama Chino, Tungian, the Send that lawyer Thomas Singelo, Sondua. Then he J.U. Jan, Jago Sangyori, Dong Yun and Trago Sangyori, Garda Newmombala Gensin Midi, then Gaduyina Devata, Gaduyina Medevata, Machiba Zoga Yupe, then you are talking more huge the Garchen is. Then he support. Genduchin back song cadre in a so long. That Jimante. Genduchin back Carson the Senna. Super son, Dukdan sees. Supo Tam Jagan, Deja here in the Dukdan here you is. Nak young woman, Dukdan here you is. Warpo Urban Sunny, Menhandons. Ang Tambo Tam Jacetaji, me don't consider Dunhan those. Then Merrix and the Dunha Kubor and those, Jabaka and Dunha and those. Then Common Latin Kaduna, they'll come and just on door, they'll come and those on door. Genuchimbeck. Hakotera.
And so we all know that how things kind of work in the world. We all want certain things. We want to accomplish or have certain things, and our wishes are really endless. But then we all know that it's actually very hard to always exactly get what you want according to your wishes. It rarely happens. And so that's why no matter who it is, everyone has their own suffering in their minds. And even though some people might not have any obvious external difficulties, they might be well off and so on, but still, as long as their mind is controlled by the afflictive emotions, they will not find any happiness, any mental happiness. They will never be content with anything. In the Calling the Guru from Afar, Chamgyal Kongtrul said that people are their needs are they're endless. There is no end to their needs. They're insatiable. If they have one thing, they need another. If they have two, they need three, and so on. For example, nowadays, if we just all we want is an iPhone, and once we have an iPhone, then we also want an iPad, and once we have that, then we also want a computer, and so on. So we just want more and more all the time, and in that. This discontentment, this lack of being content, that is what deceives you. So that's what it says in Calling the Guru from Afar, that deceives you, that leads you astray. So therefore, he said, Guru, quickly think of me with compassion and grant your blessings that I may become like you. And so, for example, if you have one thing, then that won't be enough. We want 100. If we have 1,000 things, then we want 10,000 and so on. There's just no end to our afflictive emotions. And for as long as they are present, they will always create dissatisfaction in our mind. They will always make us feel unhappy. That's important for us to recognize. And then Gendin Chöpel said that the rich talk about their problems to each other. So they also have their problems. So they speak about the hardships of their lives. And then the poor lament about their poverty when they speak to each other. And so everyone complains about their suffering because everyone has their own suffering. Everyone experiences their own suffering. And he said that there is nowhere in this samsaric state of existence where you can find any true happiness.
Okay, then no chung choki. Go yoris, do chung choki. That thing go yoris. Then do chung choki me not any jabo in a tamboris. Then the thing gabo gang song you baris not any calling you make something tabat drupal commanda goris. Commanda chujanani. That then do chung choki sin do ne. Then cova you make the something.
So what we must therefore develop is fewer desires and more contentment. And if we cannot bring up some contentment in our mind, being happy with what we have, then even if you are a king, you will still be poor inside. Also, Gampopa said in that same text, there are 10 dharmas that encourage you to attain liberation. And so one of them, for example, is to always remember the suffering of samsara. And remembering the suffering of samsara, develop fewer desires and more contentment.
Tene rawang me pa de yinde tene sapinke deva chungchong mala cha dena tene deva chimbo to togu maris sapinke deva chongla cha pa yi chimbi deva thomesi tene de yinde kanda dongha ga yin imba ngimjong gom ne tene samo danje te dangne tene thaba thamchen chimbe kompang la bejon nang gogo yure somdo.
And if one is only attached to this life, it is useless also because we don't really have any control over what will happen in this life, even if we are attached. Sakya Pandita said that if you, for as long as you are attached to the small pleasures of this life, you will never find great true happiness. And until then, everything will always have the nature of suffering, essentially. So therefore, it's better to direct our mind toward making an effort so that we may attain that state of liberation and all-knowingness.
Mai trala tinene donga chuo chela dor chonda sane ni kawe mungpote su ni malos ta mai le tin ton do pakap su tene da le lo na yang ma da mai ho ne ten ta ban tham jin jin be kong han zhong go yo res te de tene don ban na re ta ge de ban na re si ta na me le dong din res tene jimba certain Zupa something ten tung to chin and yamin canto. Not talk sigo yoris. Then 다들 땡달라 동요바 사오 삼네 되네 두상 공성의 존버 시졌다 되네 땡아 제와 장미 바시 랑요장 도미 취주도 송네 되네 타번제와 린직상양 마요베 다리 밀르 데 동다 덴바시 세 삼네 담자 야양시 고요레스
And then the Bodhicharya Avatara, it says, it is through the ship, the boat of the human body that we can transcend, cross the ocean, the waters of great suffering. And this ship, this boat is very difficult to find. And therefore, do not waste it in dullness, and do not sleep in ignorance. Do not become distracted and do not be lazy. But make an effort in attaining liberation while you can. And that means, for example, even if you just take a single vow or you practice a single virtue, you abandon a single non-virtue, then you are making your human life meaningful. So therefore, we should do the best we can to practice the paramitas of generosity and ethical discipline and patience, to meditate and to practice all of these with great diligence. So think that, lift your mind and think that now I have this precious human body. I have to make it meaningful by all means. You make it meaningful by listening, reflecting, and meditating on the teachings with great diligence. Because until now, in all past lifetimes, I have wasted many lives meaninglessly and therefore still have not attained liberation. And now that I have found a precious human body just this one single time, I must make it meaningful. So try to kind of make this commitment, like take this vow to yourself, a commitment of making the greatest meaning out of this life. And so therefore, practice even the smallest virtuous action and abandon even the smallest non-virtuous action, and think that now is the time where I can practice. Now, when you have the opportunity, if you might think that even if I don't practice the Dharma now, I can practice the Dharma in a future life. And that is really mistaken, because you don't know if you will be born as a precious human again. And even if you are, you don't know if you will encounter the holy Dharma and so on. So now you have everything complete. You have a human body, you have met the Dharma, you have the opportunity. So now is the time to practice the Dharma.
Chewa onyami pe nyingrenpo, tomi tsende sawe jdromne, dari tonglo sena shindan chor. Den jongmate re, jongmate. Gungishi na tanpen lachu yin, dada nida lachu mezi dan. Tripchin lame sharnende ges, lama dama sen lama yana. Ranga rani lawar menjo ran. Songdwa.
Then also in the Bardo, the 6 Bardo root verses, the last verse says, with mind far off and no thought of impending death, performing the meaningless activities of this life, to return empty-handed now would be utterly deluded. Recognize what is needed, the sacred Dharma. Why not practice it now at this very moment? The great accomplished gurus have said, if you do not keep in mind your master's instructions, are you not deceiving yourself?
Tā lāma dāngwa samla yā dēne tēne dāmba chūt mādam na tēne rāng rāng lō xio ka yō rēs, tēne tāla dāmba lō tā rāng rāng sō sō rēs. Tēne tā tāpa tōnyā sī gō jī tē Garchen bō yīmbā rēs. Tā ngīmjōng chī kōrn tā yū tsāwān rā wā yīn, tēne tā sāñchō sāṃ. Yeah, sāñchō sāṃ kōrn xie yān rā wā yīn dā. Yeah.
So what this is saying is that you might have the instructions of the guru, but even though you have them in your mind, if you don't practice them, you are deceiving yourself. So whether or not you're deceiving yourself is entirely in your hands, up to you. So it's important to remind yourself to strive toward actual liberation. So that is what I wanted to say about renunciation, and now I will speak about bodhicitta.
Tēne tēn, dā tēn dē, tēne rāng jī bō, dā xie dē tōnyā tsā mā yīn bā, tēne jē wā chāng mē bā xie, lū chāng mē bā xie lāng yō dē, dē kāp sā tēne dā dā pā mā, nāng yīn, jīng sōng kē, zē wē, sēn, yāng bō kē ngā, jiāng nē tēne ngā kē bō dāng bō mō, tēne zāmbā lēng nā nē, jō pām jō, zōg jē lō, sē rēng nē mī yōng nā sāmbā, laksan lemi de teni pama nye de risi. Teni pama ke ranga pada poma chintu teni so lo tang toke yo risi. Teni jase la le na kari song risa angi juba na tena tomi tena da la tsewa chi mana do na randi chi hiksa. Te san taye senjin rasi sanchu senjin jase la le yinsi. Rang jibu ma yin pa pama sentient tamche dewan do pa jing song nongar men do pa jing song yin de Tenzin pama sentient tamche dewa da denpa na sao nyam pa gong ko yo resi.
And then when we strive toward peace and liberation, we shouldn't do it just for ourselves, but we should remember that all sentient beings in all of our past lifetimes have been our parents. And while they were our parents, they cared for us with great love and spoke to us gently and had a completely pure intention toward us. All they wanted is just our happiness, thinking that may my son or my daughter have everything in this world, all the wealth and perfect health and a long life and so on. And a parent would be able to even give their life for their son or their daughters. And so in the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says in verse 10, so when my mothers who have been kind to me since beginningless time are suffering, what's the use of my own happiness? So therefore, giving rise to bodhicitta in order to liberate limitless sentient beings is the Bodhisattva's practice. So when we strive toward liberation, then we should not just think about it for ourselves, but think that there are all these sentient beings who have been my parents. And what is the use of my happiness when they are all suffering? So when you strive toward liberation, it means to strive for the happiness of all those like mother sentient beings.
Yeah, then that dongar da travar saonya da hinji gongo yores. Deva da dembar saonya samba dongar da travar saonya hinji. Then pama semchin tamje dongar me be deva da dena nyampe gawa gong. Teda gawa da deva rangin semchin jingsong yindu. Then pama pama bunda nyamdre zamayin ba. Sentient time je la gombe na ta nyong chin bo yin de ni sanje je gompang tobar si be jue yin song do.
So we develop love for sentient beings, which is a wish for their happiness, and compassion, which is a wish to freedom from suffering. And so first wishing that sentient beings be free from suffering and are happy, and then when they achieve happiness, we feel joy in that. That's rejoicing. And it is not limited to certain beings, but all sentient beings. We find joy in all beings' happiness. And also our love is not limited to just our parents or our family and friends and so on, but it is the same, it is an equal kind of love for all beings, and that is immeasurable equanimity. So we should think that may all sentient beings be happy and free from suffering, may they all attain the state of enlightenment.
Semji pan yindung de yanda zoba sanjen du songdo semjin dong de semjin deji dende sijete teni sanje toba juriyesi.
So this is the cause of attaining Buddhahood. If one cultivates a wish to benefit all sentient beings, that wish, that altruistic wish, is the cause for attaining Buddhahood.
Semji pan yindung lam dong semji pan randong de yanda zoba sanjen du songdo de teni semjin tamje dong de semji de kichin bolino rangji bo mayin ba.
So it is saying that to cultivate a wish to benefit all others. So you strive to liberation for the benefit of others. So it doesn't say that you strive for liberation for your own benefit. That's not the kind of mind generation we're talking about, but it's for all sentient beings.
In the
37 Bodhisattva practices, it says, all suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. The perfect Buddhas arise from the altruistic mind. Therefore, exchanging one's own happiness for the suffering of others is the Bodhisattva's practice.
Then Donga Kanglan Jona, then the Sancho San, Gombe the Garchen Boying Batang, then Rinpoche Kaduina, Sancho San Sorndon, Gachinanga Yubarwa, then Telegum Chinchambo Yori, then a part of Jula Sancho San. Gina says Machibo Mayin Patada, Rangasan, a ship dead and Papet, younger Yoba. Then Nato Sami Shizari, then it's in Natutama. Samakan mul senra yishisi yorwa te the same shibde papa yuna serenga nenyo gekasawa ta pinto chemondo lak yoris geja
Gekishira meba
jobo ge yomara gekasawa sawa ne oh yeah, Gekasama Pinto Chimbondo Laguioris, then it Sam like Hibde Papa, the Tomlin Yojuba Maris, then Lamata Sinlabs, Lamia Sinlab, si, Netuja Yuba Maris, Lama Tamba Namje, Sungpe, Dama, and Yamsa Lama Latina, then Togu Bakiris.
Patrul Rinpoche said that the 84,000 Dharma teachings all are included within bodhicitta. Therefore, no matter what arises, whatever is the difficulty, bodhicitta is most important. And also Garchen Rinpoche really bases all of his teachings on bodhicitta. He always speaks about bodhicitta. And that, of course, has a great significance as a reason. So we surely must cultivate bodhicitta, and cultivating bodhicitta is not just for the sake of future lives, but even right now, whenever bodhicitta arises, you will feel peaceful and happy in any given moment. And that's something everyone really actually knows. And also, it really stands to reason from a scientific perspective, and most people really believe in science. So even scientifically, actually, it is said that if one's mind is peaceful and happy, that really contributes to longevity and fewer illnesses, and even it is said that one will not age so quickly. if the mind is peaceful and happy. And again, peace and happiness is not something that you can buy in the market. And it's also not something that a kind of a blessing or something that the guru can just give you and transfer onto you. But it is something that you must cultivate yourself by putting the instructions, the teachings from the guru into practice.
Tenin kowa ke donha ke te ten sanje ke chirang ke sala ke lene donha me pala yo to mares tenin sanje tuju yung ten te chirang lam parte te shoya yo mares tenin chirang ke chu lo chini tenin chu ke ne lok de yang da ba tong na ten chini ke den ba de yang da ba tong yo na tenin chang a tron do ke yo res donha le tron do ke yo res 하고서 전남 늑바초에 맞춰진 거기다가 사기 미사를 니도 봐 예난 폼이 진이 네바 통은 좋아지었어 다 정도와
And the Buddha said that I cannot wash your sins like washing it with water. And I cannot take you by the hand and lift you out of samsara and place you into a location where there is no suffering. And I cannot give you the qualities of my enlightened mind. Only when you directly see, when you experience the true nature of phenomena, the ultimate reality of things, only then will you find liberation from suffering.
Yeah, then that tambo tuba, then samba, then gomba, Latin, then Sanjay compound togoba, that then just on your days.
So in brief, Dharma practice means that we attain the state of enlightenment by first listening, then reflecting, and then practicing or meditating on the Dharma.
Dimba yanana tambo logic net musi. Tene logic ngala ni. Tene me the sun at any net trogo, then just on the wa. Techibarindo.
In the teachings on the Four Noble Truths, also it says that first you have to identify your physician, your doctor, and then you have to the doctor, and the doctor diagnoses your illness. Then after you are diagnosed, then you have to listen to the doctor's instructions. Then you have to take the medicine that you are prescribed, and then when you follow the whole procedure, the instruction of the physician, then you will become healed from your illness. So it's very similar to that.
Then Dada Naso Topo and Newmba, Chada, Newmba Chada Yores, Berna, Mam Bombo Chimbo Hegla, Ma Bombo Chimbo China, Matambo Langunzin, Matambo China, Niki.
Just go. Berna,
Mapumbo, Tambo Chinas. Then it Niki la co, Newmba Wang the Chorsona, then it rank get near the Nyamdra Sola Cha. Then it mentung the solar dang and lega sena, then it champs along chandro yura, then it sona, then it ranso or jata yinso panda lega le younger you do, they got round up in Pumbo Korange, Ziginiam Roata, then it gangata Noragan and Sundro Yures, then it Pumbo Koranla, similar ship them tang papat yuba kaboris. Then the Dakaris and call Yaning sola, ninja sola, do chag chats on Rua, then the thing, cotton no has on to yours.
Think Bango kar.
Ah,
Bango. Trambo.
Trambo, ko Trambo,
Trambo kar.
ko Tambo, Matrambo China,
Oh, Tambo Trambo in a
Tambo in a
Drinking emotion.
then you move one Yaring call Sholan do chag one Shosona, then like us do not take cotton chandra yura. The Hakoson, yeah.
So in order to develop a state of peace and happiness in the mind, we need to perceive the afflictive emotions, especially attachment, anger, and ignorance, as our true enemies, as flawed states of mind. And we should regard the feelings of love and compassion, of bodhicitta, of altruism, as our best friend in our mind. Right now, our best friends are the afflictive emotions. For example, if you have a kind of a official, like a government official or minister or so, who starts out being really honest, but then one day he becomes controlled by afflictive emotions, and then because he's attached to his own side, like his friends and families and so on, and then he develops an aversion against the other side, then he might do all kinds of things that are contrary to the law. For example, they might do things that bring victory to themselves and ruin to others and so on. So then eventually, if that's what he does, then even though he was really honest and good in the beginning, in the end, he will lose all of his like fame, all of his kind of brilliance and, renown in the world. And then he will just end up in a lot of difficulties and troubles. And then also in his mind, he will certainly will not experience peace and happiness, and he will be in a state of suffering and misery. And so that all comes from the attachment to one's close ones and the aversion against others. So in this way, again and again, we are creating suffering. And so this is really how the afflictive emotions create suffering. It begins with being attached to one's own side. And once we are attached to one side, we have already created suffering right there and then.
Yongo Yuza, Sami Shizaris, Mune Samotana, Dawamune, Tendo Chade de Yores, Yena Yangaso, Tamabajo, Haku, Kapu, Hakona Yante, Wang Mando, go to Kaburis, then Malare Paka, Song yours. Dupen Northern Tedis, do chat and do Turich Songdua, do chat and do Turich, Zabzap Chisona, Turich in the Zabzakino. Dupen Norn Teddy.
Dupen Norn.
Dupen Norn Tangalu go.
Tip a couple of
tell him to chat and do the thing. Is Zabzak
So no, even if one starts out as a good, for example, in a country, the leader of a country, and with their ministers and so on, their cabinet, and starts out well. But once they become controlled by desire and by attachment, it's, for example, it starts with wasting a lot of the resources, money, and so on. And in the end, we all know that they will end up in difficulties. So our actual enemy is that our desire or attachment, and ordinary people cannot really see that. And even if we understand that we shouldn't have too much desire, even though we know that, we still actually become controlled by it, and it's still very difficult to stop it from arising. So therefore, Milarepa says that whenever you are in a circumstance where desire or attachment to an object of desire arises, be extremely vigilant and careful. So desire, a desirous object is just one example, but it can be applied to any other sense perceptions, so not just forms, but also sounds and touch and taste and so on. Whatever it is, when you encounter it and you are unmindful and you don't do what should be done and you don't give up what should be given up, then you will become controlled by afflictive emotions, and that will create much trouble.
Okay, then that's how much then Sanjay Gujo Jan, then it Java Tami Bala let up by Chang in the one key. Then in Nangan cook a day one and one of yours, Nimon Wanda. Sanjay Gujo, then Chapimdo, Nimon Bak, one general, one and one of yours, Nimon Bak, 10 out of yours. That Della, Kade Janking there. That Jinshi. Tata Malare Basun and Dupa Northern Traitors and Duchaji, Dorich, someone like Jinshi Saint Tone. Then the Rango Luna is on a talk about this. Then it's Hajek, then say Dachin Zilla, some Matamjek melon, double judge the carriage, some say Dachin the package at it. Say Dachin Zig, melon, double judge the Rank Zuzilla Tachiri, Ashura. Oh, 10 Jimba, Chiranka Kadina, Chiranka Luna is on a tabartago, because does. Jumba Taki Luna is on Taki. That was Sanjay Dachin Tewatera. Ah, said Dachin Sanjay. Sanjay said to the Mari Melon Mansama Yura. Did it come up again his serva? Sail to Atara. But thank you, Melon. You want to get the double judge the carrier loved. Say, what they not so Zupotache, which it is. Say, Tennis Sanjay, oh, there is 10 minutes. Chiranka 10 Chiranka Luna is on a Kaduina, Taki Sigori, that's her. Then rank Tega rank Zugita Nangi, then it Jumba rank some Leparta goose. Jumba rank some Taki Sena non tromeon. Lunga is on Taki Mazena non troyon. Tinshi danger the Garchen boyin, then song yours. Hakosa.
Even though everyone, all beings possess the cause of Buddhahood, Buddha nature, still they continue to wander endlessly from lifetime to lifetime, controlled by the afflictive emotions. So therefore, for as long as we are controlled by the afflictive emotions, the mere presence of Buddha nature is not of much use to us, because our mind has become enslaved by the afflictive emotions. And the counter agent that opposes this enslavement is mindfulness. So as Milarepa just said, we mentioned before, whenever you encounter an object of desire, be vigilant and mindful, and guard your body, speech, and mind. And once when the Buddha was alive, and the Buddha's son, Rahula, everyone had asked the Buddha, so like what is like why does everybody have a mirror? Like what is the point of everyone having a mirror? And so then the sun said, it must be to look in, like, to see your face, to kind of check your appearance. And the Buddha said, it's exactly that. A mirror is so you can see, you can check. But what you should check and look at is your body, speech, and mind. So just like looking in a mirror, always look at your body, speech, and mind, and always examine your mind all the time. If you're always vigilant and examine your mind, then you will not be mistaken in your actions. But once you stop looking at your mind, examining your body, speech, and mind, then you will be mistaken in your actions. And so for this reason, he said that mindfulness is most important.
Okay, then that just say la lina. Some just holding by Maria, Dharma count the Julan just says young, Rang, some makeup and June to tend and shipping them by Jindon to by just say la lin, some banana, June to Tini, Tinshi. Tinshi, then K, then Lander ne, Gangi Patampi, Hakoa. Tini shipping K. Ten nine rock dog done top juice in. Then the say go your race.
In the 37 Bodhisattva practices, in verse number 36, it says, at all times, in whatever you do, look at the state of your mind and constantly examining yourself with mindfulness for the sake of others is the Bodhisattva's practice. So be mindful all the time. With mindfulness, you will know what to do and what not to do at any time. And with mindfulness, you are able to see, is what I am doing consistent with what I actually aspire or intend to do.
Then Sanjo said the Kagalap, but sometimes like the time of Java Samayimpa. Ningong Robert Deni, then Pama Sentient Tamji Deva than Dina Jamaro. Deva that then by a dark drug. Deva that then by Lama control something to Ginchin Yamba. Some go your race.
And then bodhicitta shouldn't be something that you just talk about. It's just lip service, and it shouldn't be your devotion. Shouldn't be just a display of piousness, and you're just folding your palms. It should come from the bottom of your heart. From the bottom of your heart, you should think, I really wish that all sentient beings are happy and that they are free from suffering, and I will accomplish that. And so I pray to the Lama and the three jewels to think of me with compassion.
Then Muzum Sanjin Namchega, Lutan Lomju, Tami Lutan, then Lutan Nanyi, Daggett Pama Sentient Tamjela, Pimba and David Chid, Rank Lunda Chaba Tong the Top Gujang. Juba me some. Okay. Muzum Sanjin Namche, Lutan Lomju, Lutan, Rang Tangwa Nanyi, Daggett and Pama Sentient Tamjela, Pinto Bad, David Chid, the Rank Lunda Chapa Mambo Tom, Top Good, na Juba me. Samba Pimba Juba me, Sambata, Teta Java Seda Jeba, Sancho Samba Juba Kang Jeba, Daga Juba, Nibar Georgia, Lama Conjo, Son Chin, Yam Wokandos. How was I?
And so then you should make prayers, for example, thinking that just as the Buddhas of the past have willingly, freely given up everything, their bodies, their resources, everything for the sake of others, similarly, may I also be able to give up everything for mother sentient beings in order to benefit them, in order to bring happiness to them. For example, may I even be able to cut my own body into pieces if necessary without any regret. May my actions resemble the actions of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. Help me that I am able to practice, to act like a Bodhisattva acts. So consider me Guru and Three Jewels.
Teta yang sen la lo yang ne ren bien be tur chimbo me go pa. Tene sambe samta tela tin de tene hingi chimbo je yong de tene sama Tenzin zhen jiao yin de ten dong ni duo la ta ni wo cha ge yo ris. Tene tangbo nga su samba da hingi la lo yang je de Garchen bo yin ba da pa zhe Rinpoche ke lo jong rang ke lo de jong san chok sem de rang ke lo jang na lunga gewa na je ma ze jang Abao Lama chuksa yore kins. Abao Lama chuksa yore kin.
Again, Korean, Dara.
Kins and Nachi Hura.
Not guaranteed.
Just a jatabata. Chuksa goni. Then that's not a kins in.
And so therefore, in this way, you train your mind again and again and gradually develop these qualities. So first love arises, and then from love, great compassion arises. And because everything is interdependent, you step closer and closer to realizing emptiness. So therefore, in the beginning, it's important to start with training the mind in love and compassion. And Pato Rinpoche had said that when you train your mind, mind training refers to training your own mind. And what your own mind should be trained in is the mind of bodhicitta. Even if you are not able to do anything with body and speech, if you train the mind in bodhicitta, then I will guarantee you that you will reach the state of liberation.
Okay, then that. Then the Tana Yon doing that. Then take Zava. Take Zava Pine. With the got the take Zava. You want out the Karisina. Then in Jong Gong of your race. Kadina. The nature and you go. They in the Nimjong kitchen boy in Bata. Then Nimjong Lodon number ye. The Kadina Sango your race. Lodon number get the Chungchong race and Sakin Zokin or Marite. Theasaris and some of your maris. That's what Chula Gurmanda Baka told our is. Then the Tenit Gonitan Lungdi Mambom Tangri Dan Yanjaki Mogobachi. The name Nibada Sancho and Gongo your race. Then in Yonki Yona, then Sancho and Magona, Sanji Comato Mede, then Sancho and Gongo Yadan. How that end our is in Nibo.
So that completes the teachings. And so to summarize, the essence of the teachings is that cultivate renunciation. Think about renunciation all the time. Renunciation is what encourages you or inspires you to enter and to practice the Dharma. It's most important. And it's the essence of the 4 thoughts that turn the mind. Always reflect on those 4 thoughts and don't diminish their significance, thinking that it's not so important. They're kind of beginning practices. What's more important is Mahamudra and Dzogchen. Don't think in this way, because the 4 thoughts, cultivating renunciation is really your companion along the way. It causes you to enter the Dharma, it inspires you to persevere in the Dharma, and so on. And so I already mentioned many quotations before, I won't mention them again, but always cultivate renunciation. Think about renunciation. And then secondly, cultivate bodhicitta, because renunciation alone will also not lead you to enlightenment if you lack bodhicitta. So therefore cultivate bodhicitta. So these 2 things really are the essence.
Okay, now dedication only English, page number 11.
By this merit, may I attain omniscience. Having defeated the enemies, my wrongdoings, may I liberate all beings who are tossed in the ocean of samsara by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Whatever virtues sentient beings possess, whatever good they have done, will do, and are doing now, whatever goodness there may be, may it permeate all beings everywhere. By the virtue accumulated throughout the 3 times by others and myself, may all beings filling the reaches of space enter the gateway of the unexcelled path, and may they attain the Vajra holder's ground. By all the virtue actually performed and mentally created, by myself and all sentient beings of the 3 times, may all beings of the 6 realms attain the 5 kayas and realize the primordial wisdom of the Buddhas in the Dharmadhatu mandala of the awakened mind. Glorious root guru, precious one who sits upon a lotus at my heart, hold me with kindness and grant me all the accomplishments of enlightened body, speech, and mind. I pray for the excellent health of the guru. I pray that he lives a supremely long life. I pray that his activities spread far and wide. Grant blessings that I may not be separate from my guru. May the Buddha's teachings, the only source of benefit and happiness, endure long, and may the victory banner of longevity be steadfast for those who uphold the teachings. May the sound of the great Dharma drum liberate all sentient beings from suffering. Please remain and teach the Dharma for infinite millions of kalpas. By the might of this powerful merit, may the aspirations of the benefactors and their circles be accomplished within this very life. May their obstacles be pacified, may everything be auspicious, and may their wishes be fulfilled according to the Dharma. Just as the hero Manjushri realized things as they are, and as did Samantabhadra too, I will follow in their path and perfectly dedicate all these virtues. As all such dedications have been praised as supreme by the victorious ones of the 3 times, I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue to excellent conduct. By the blessing of the Buddhas who attained the 3 kayas, by the blessing of the truth of the unchanging nature of reality, and by the blessing of the undivided Sangha community, may my prayers be fulfilled according to this dedication. By the virtues accumulated in the 3 times by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the intrinsic root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious awakening. Great Vajradhara, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Dharma Lord Gampopa, Pagmodrupa, and Lord Trigumpa, may the auspiciousness of all the Kagyu Lamas prevail.
How long like pray in Tibet? Page number 22. O Garara Gorve Yanganso Pendan Deva Male Jongan Jinre Zenwa Tenzin Jamzo Ye Yabe Senda Bard Danger Je Guancho Sunde Shakja Senge Ye Temban Zinjan Bebe Danye Je Gwenzan Choban Jordan Telan Jo Landa Jensen Lama Yaben Zo Guancho Sanja Danyan Dagong Be Temban Zinla Dada Dojen Tambe Chuje Shipsaran Hawa Ye Jaga Wogin Joga Yaben Zo Pagbe Yan Aryan Deva Jan Dongam Sozang Garja Reso Jeden Gombe Dogze Chuden Ba Babden Garchin Kete Gaja Shibza Gunza Gunchin Chuje Dendra Nela Wantan Tugong Ba Rinchin Barja Damba Senda Ba Shidra Duzan Gumben Zinjo Sadon Korlo Jirve Jarbo Don Jindon Garba Zambe Zanje Don Namka Dava Jabe Zewa Jin Samba Jinre Zegla Sovan Du Oi Mane Amawan Om Mane B'Amaor Om Mane B'Amaor Om Mane B'Amaor Om Mane B'Amaor Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Abao Lama and Ina and all the translators. Thanks everyone to join us. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Oh.